So I'm here to give a different perspective on what, honestly, a lot of these speakers were pretty incredible. I mean, there was a perspective on building an in-house agency, on learning about, how to put things together, on learning about how to deal with a team and build it up there. My perspective is going to be a little different. It is really from the point of view of a creative and how I work to build a team that really lifts up with creative, that going back to my history of being as an ECD, as a creative throughout my entire career at the agency side, going in-house, I'll be honest with you, was fraught with a little danger. And so there were perspectives that were taken advantage of that honestly I took advantage of. So I want to say, this is how my career began. So this was the nervousness on it. 2 weeks after I started, this is actually no joke, I almost got fired. And it wasn't for drugs. Well, they hadn't found out yet. But it was, and I was actually wondering if, the Hamburglar was part of what I was involved. See, I've got the McDonald's thing up here. But what it really is the analogy for what I went through and what I learned, and honestly, the screw-ups I made and that creatives made as we were trying to make the transition to in-house. Now, how did I get here? I don't mean Chicago. I flew in and boy, am my arms tired. No, that's a really bad joke. I'm from a Catskills background, if anybody is familiar with that. But I mean my life, my career. Why I'm at an IHAF event, which if you would have asked me 26 years ago, that's how long I've been in this business, why you could never have imagined, first of all, that I was in advertising, as you'll see. Secondly, that I'm at in-house. Even 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined that I would have been in-house. And honestly, the people that, well, let's be clear, gave me shit on LinkedIn, couldn't have imagined that I was in-house either. And we'll discuss that a little more. I guess what I can share is my experience in the agency world, which I loved, but now I tend to call it the outhouse, because I learned how things have changed and how difficult they've become. And I think as you recruit and as you meet other people, you might see how the life of an outhouse agency has really gotten difficult for creatives. So the in-house, and sorry, I'm going to have to say this joke. I've been thinking about it the whole time. The transition from outhouse to in-house doesn't stink. I've been saving that for Robert back there in the corner, but because it was as offensive as I might be able to get. But anyway, I think it's making a culture where work can be created. That's what's important, which is part of the agency ethos, the things that I grew up with. But I think we also have to fight the preconceptions of creatives and recognizing that in-house, which took me a while to learn, and a lot of you people are here, actually might be better. And that's kind of sacrilegious for a guy who grew up for 20 years being an agency guy. It took me a while to figure out that I had to look at it differently. I made mistakes. The experience helped, but I did have the preconceptions. And after all, when you go into agencies, I've probably been at 8 or 10 different agencies, honestly, probably freelanced at 50 or 60. They're kind of all the same. There are different ethos, there are different ways that we go in. Some guy says, oh, we're about this. But it's the same thing. We have our creative director, we have the ACD, we have the copywriters and all this, and no matter where, whenever you freelance, it takes about 20 minutes and you get the vibe. But we're building something different here. And as I said, I was a dyed-in-the-wool agency guy. I mean, that's really what I did, and I loved it. And my first gig was on Madison Avenue. That is absolutely true. But as was said before, I was a janitor on the streets of Madison Avenue at Darcy. This is no shit. My job was, and you were talking before, I forgot, when you two were up here about working in the back of a McDonald's, which is great. Working at a diner, all those kind of jobs. I was sitting out there in my light, do you remember the light beige shirts and the dark brown shirts? All these people walking by and I'm scraping, which is now, by the way, an illegal substance that I had to use, scraping a chewing gum on the floor. And that was in front of Darcy. And my first exposure, and this was kind of the later times, I'm not that old, of the Mad Men times. So I also had to clean up after those Mad Men events. A lot of it was wiping butt cheeks off of the Xerox machine. But occasionally I'd find some bottles that were not completely empty. But anyway, it really was, if you guys remember, Benton & Bowles, does anyone remember the agency Benton & Bowles? Which became DMB&B, which became Darcy, and now is Publicis, I believe. So it went through a few things. Those, I guess that ignominious beginning somehow led to becoming an ECD, as they said, at J. Walter Thompson to TBWA. I started at Honda's agency, RPA, which I was fortunate to have some great mentors. Just want a shout out to Larry Poster, who has nothing to do with this, but the fact that started with ideas and learned things that made my career grow, and I've had quite a few mentors along the way, which I think is an important part of this subject, irrespective of whether you're in-house or out-house. But I was really successful, but there is that moment in a life for a creative where, first of all, there is, I'm just going to be honest about why a lot of people go in-house. And a lot of this is for recruitment too, to try to get the type of talent that I'm sure my team has gotten. And sometimes it's difficult to do that. But something we take advantage of, which maybe all you have, is that old story. Children and death. I don't know if you guys can see the screens over here, all the way over there, but they're pretty uninteresting. But you know something? For 26 years of working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, had kids. Not only did we have kids, we had twins. And it took a while to realize that, it took me 26 years to realize that when they were 8 years old, I was having dinner with them every other week. And that's a little screwed up. And then on the final thing, right, but I guess that's advertising. I'm not going to call out some agencies, but I'm sure you guys know of agencies that it's a 6 day a week gig. Whether you say it or not, it's a 6 day a week gig. You're happy if it's 7th. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a problem with that. I loved it. I was even, to some degree, one of those leaders who didn't say it out loud, but tacitly was pretty jazzed about it. But then there's the other part. My dad passed away. Not going to get all maudlin and stuff, but he said it was out of a freaking movie. As he was just about to go, I wish I would have spent more time with the kids. And that struck me, and I realized that my priorities were screwed up. And that is, I hate to take advantage of something like that to use it for business, but that is the sweet spot and the truth of why a lot of us went in-house, and why a lot of the creatives that, as you'll see, as I brought on, is the first step to something which is ultimately a pretty great thing. And I went in-house and it worked and it was great and we built an incredible team. And you know something? We were trying to get a Norman Rockwell thing here, which if you were to see my family, it's more like a Woody Allen movie or a Neil Simon play than Norman Rockwell. But I really was. It was true. I was having dinner with my family. I would say 4 or 5 nights a week. I was getting home to see my twins. I was there at 6:30. It took a while for me to leave early because I always felt like if I leave at 6:30, I'm doing a half a day. But I was having dinner with my family. I had hobbies. I started surfing. I live in Huntington Beach. Well, I didn't start surfing. I was a theoretical surfer. I had, I guess, what is it? I was a potential surfer, not a kinetic surfer. So I've got about I don't know, I've got 3 surfboards that McDonald's, thank you, that have not been wet. But I have the surfboards and a lot of books about it, and a lot of magazines, and my kids have a lot of posters. But when you move to Huntington Beach, that's what you have to do. I do remember, though, my wife, pointing out, she was concerned, and shout out to my wife, I'm hi honey, is, this is live, right? This is FaceTime live? Anyway, that we're 2 hours behind, so she's just taking the kids to school. That, there are certain trade-offs, and would I be okay with that? I mean, I loved being an agency guy. I loved going on big shoots. I loved, working with big-time directors. Big accounts we're talking about, big budgets, and I really enjoyed that. And I was thinking, something? My priorities have changed. That's fine. I went to Experian and I started that job, and it was wonderful. But there were some trade-offs, which again, my wife had pointed out. But then everything changed. Two executives, some of you may know here, a guy named Darren Levis and a guy named Keith Everhard, who are kind of my dream team of the executive committee, came into my office one day and shut the door. And this is when I was like, okay, I'm dealing with the fact that I am going to be chill, that I'm going to get home every day. And they told me that they had just released, to some degree, hopefully having a little to do with me, they had just released their 10-year agency. Their big agency, I don't know if I could say the name, what do you think? Screw it. The Martin Agency, which you guys may know. They're a great agency. I'm not going to knock them. They're one of those agencies that creatives dream of working at. They do Geico, for example. That's probably the biggest thing. So all those Geico things. And they were experienced agency for 10 years. And I don't think there was any thought initially of replacing the agency, because they're a great place. But when I came in, and these executives and the president and all these people were realizing that things had to be mixed up at Experian. And as I'll go through a little later, things were changing there quite a bit. Things had changed in the industry, things had changed with what you first think of with credit reports, and with getting credit reports, and with getting your numbers. So there was a change in the organization. So that was one of the changes. So they walked into my office and said, hey, which I thought maybe they were going to say, this has been a nice couple of weeks, go have lunch with your kids all day, and dinner all day. And actually, they asked me to say, why don't you build a team to replace the Martin Agency? And I keep putting this down. I'm like, what the hell did I do with it? And I was like, great, but what do I do now? I was from an agency background where I had all that support, all the stuff that you guys had talked about at Bloomberg, all that support, all that operations. When we think of an agency sometimes, it's like, oh, they just do cool stuff. You forget that there's so much going on. And it was like, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to staff up? And honestly, there was a great team already, the Experian Creative Services team. But our scope was clearly changing, and we had to make some changes. There are quite a few people who are still there, and it sucks. No one wants to do this, but there is some amazing people that we brought in as well. But we needed to bring in some talent. Our scope had changed significantly from an in-house to, from an out, well, I was going to say, from kind of an in-house creative services team to what we were responsible now as an AOR. We were in charge of the brand. So there were these challenges. The level of talent we're looking for, and I'm not denigrating the team because I'm an in-house freaking evangelist, but is sometimes difficult when you bring up the word in-house. It's just true. And it's not like creatives are like, the top of my bucket list is to go work at an in-house agency at a credit agency. Like, oh, I've been dreaming of that. Wait, I can run Geico, I can run Honda, I can do, what would you think? I'm just trying to think of some Wyden Kennedy client. What? Nike, that seems pretty good. Nike will come up later, actually. Thanks for reminding me of that. But it really isn't the top of their list. But I gotta say, I kind of took advantage of some of the preconceptions, and let's just go through some of them. When they think of in-house, this is what they think we're going to be doing. By the way, this is intentionally like no one out here is doing this stuff, but this is what you think of in-house. Oh, I got to put in a ticket for my IT. That's a lot of what it does. Is we, did some stuff. Actually, I'm not going to knock it. The first award I ever won was a Christmas card for RPA. But, okay, this was one of the most fun assignments I've had in about 30 years. But anyway, it was great. And then they also see an endless line of cubicles. This is what corporate life is going to be. It is a little. But I think a biggest thing actually for me too, and this is not only talking about creatives, this is perspectives that I had, was that I liked being the cool guy. We liked being the cool guy. We fly into Denver and we're like hip dressed, we rent our nice cars, we go in and we do our little show, which, you know, I swear is a lot better than, I'm doing a lot better than this on that stuff, because that was, you know, if it didn't go well, you know, 25 people might lose their jobs. But anyway, we would go in and then we would disappear. And we didn't have to deal with all these issues of, honestly, being in the bathroom standing next to my client, being stuck on the elevator next to my client, all these things, like, you know, eating next to my client. These were things that we kind of, agencies love that magic. I loved it too. We kind of fly in, we problem solve, and we split. Also, every IHAF thing that I have gone to here as well, someone asked the same question, and it's true. It's a good question to ask. I remember the first thing I went to, I don't know if anyone's here from Boeing, but the first IHAF roundtable I went to was a Boeing, and 3 people asked the same thing. We've got to change, because the fact that people get into an in-house agency and they sit there for so long means the work is going to get stale. That is what every in-house critic, creative, and everything says. But I honestly think that's kind of bullshit. I think that has to do with my job as a leader, to keep creatives interested, to give them challenges, and also to have creatives that are inspired to learn. And that has a lot to do with recruiting, whether you are recruiting them to do the Nike account or whether you're recruiting them to do the smallest little Christmas card. If they can't find inspiration in it, there's just a problem with the creatives in the first place. And oh my God, a dress code. The first thing that people show up, actually, I'm going to tell the truth here, and there's someone who works with me who can say this is true, had a person show up for an interview on Monday. And he's a Chicago creative director. I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if he's trying out for other jobs or if anyone knows that he's splitting. He showed up in a suit. A suit as a creative. I mean, that must have torn his heart out. And it's like the dress code. Fortunately, Experian is a little forward thinking, and that happens to not be true. And ultimately, why do you go in-house? It's the sunset of your career. Ageism has timed you out. You're not going to get anything for your, this is for creatives, by the way. I mean, you think, like, I remember when I was, as people who work with me know, there are a lot of squirrels that run around, and I'll just divert off into my ADD. I really should have found some Adderall this morning. But anyway, that it's the end of your career. And I had what I was pretty proud of a career. And again, that crap I got on LinkedIn when I changed LinkedIn to being in-house, I mean, it was brutalized. You're a sellout. All these people who had either followed me or worked with me honestly thought I was a dick in the first place. You know, they finally had, do you guys remember Agency Spy? This is another squirrel. Do you remember when the comments were allowed to be on it? Now they've gotten rid of it. Adweek Butter, it's kind of boring, but those comments were great. People were brutal. And to some degree, LinkedIn has become that, but it's, you know, it's kind of a backhanded, like, oh, so happy that you can spend time with your family. All you give a shit about is your twins. I mean, it's true. But that perspective that you get to spend time with your family is true. And that is great. That is the hook. That is the reason I went in. I'm not working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, although there's some people here that will say occasionally we do. And I took advantage of it, honestly, in recruiting, because it is true. So I had to find the people. So I use those, well, they're not misconceptions. I use those perceptions of what an in-house place is. And had headhunters and talked, and LA is a very, Southern California is a very, this word is appropriate, by the way, is a very incestuous advertising community, and people talk a lot, and creatives talk a lot, and agencies talk a lot. So you'd hear, so-and-so at Chiat had a kid. So-and-so at 72 and Sunny is sick of working late. You know, they wanted to have a hobby. They want to, I don't know, they want to go drawing. They want to learn the guitar, and you just hear this stuff. But that so-and-so happens to be a kick-ass creative as well. it took time, but we got a great team together by putting our ear to the community and finding out like people. I mean, there's someone in this room I don't want to point out who really incredible creative from Shide. And he had a kid. Get him on the phone. And he's now part of the team. But wait, there's more. This is kind of, like we have, the balance between, here's no squirrel. We balance between, brand advertising and ShamWow advertising. And I just still love But Wait, There's More. There's actually a book called But Wait, There's More, which is incredibly stupid, but it had a great title. But we had additional challenge to deal with. And that's just not the creative point of view. It's the corporate point of view. What goes on when we got there, when we started building this. Creatives don't care about performance. I mean, that's the rub that we get. And I'm not going to say that that's completely untrue. There is definitely a feeling like I want to get freaking awards so I can get my 18 months and I could get my, and when I split, what do we have, like a pencil's like a $20,000, coupon. A D&AD is a $40,000 coupon. An Addy is, a $7,000 coupon. No, an Addy is like a $300 coupon. But by the way, we've won a lot of them, so I'm very proud of it. But there's also that we're babies. That's a big thing, which I'm sure you've had. I think people have brought up, it's so precious. These are, not only are we babies, but we treat everything like babies. These are true. These are perspectives that I think we need to be aware of as creatives and when we're building a creative team. This is not, whether it's horseshit or not, let's say it, perception's more important than reality, and we certainly know that by being in advertising. Creatives don't care about the price tag. Let's get 17 helicopters and fly in above Thailand and wipe out a whole forest like the opening of Apocalypse Now. Sure, we don't care about the price tag. And the worst of all, we're just weirdo schmucks. That is a big problem. And I think there's a perspective on that, well, I mean, I guess the perspective on it is, first of all, a lot of it's true. We are weirdo schmucks, and we can't help but be creative. I mean, that's why we do this. But there are some misunderstandings in a corporate culture of the fact that we're weirdo schmucks. I mean, that's kind of where our creativity comes from. So what do? We had to change perceptions all around of the creatives and of the company. And no one wants to, well, I don't know, no one wants to be known as a weirdo schmuck. I don't mind. I mean, I guess it's better than a weirdo putz, or maybe a weirdo, I don't know which one's better. But we needed to change perceptions of the creatives and the corporate side, because now we were working side by side. So what was our first responsibility? And I know that, Bloomberg had dealt with this as well, is creating our first branding, which was branding ourselves. We needed to change it from the expectations of a creative services. And this was for recruiting and inside. And what? We had to change to failures. So this is a conversation we're having. It's a little bit of a side thing, but in a corporate culture, sometimes I feel, even conversations I've had there, that failure is not accepted. As you're building a creative team, that is the most important thing for creatives. To be able to feel the trust and to feel with their team and to feel, what was that thing you used to do, the trust fall, where you fall bark. I gotta have some water. Actually, it's vodka, but in order to screw up, in order to say this is a stupid idea, if you can't do that, work will endlessly be mediocre. And that is hard. That was one of the hardest things to build in a corporate environment, because we don't have the walls cut off. We don't have a shut off. We're embedded with the team. So we had to create something new, but I will say that with the support of really an incredible executive team. As I said, Experian recognized that they had to go through some changes. And honestly, without them, without, Darren, who I said I worked with, Darren Levis, and who was actually doing a presentation at you are too, I think, at Wonderful in LA, so everybody go see that. He's our director of brand, our kind of primary client, and the CMO, Kevin, we're completely onto this. And we branded ourselves for the corporate teammates and the clients as well as ourselves. And that was how we started the Cooler. You know, I'm probably way behind because I talk a little too much, but I could give you the story maybe later about where the name came with the Cooler. It actually doesn't take as long, forget it. I'm from New York, and I had an office, and as people know, I hate being hot. I can't stand it. I'm walking around Chicago without a jacket because I love being cold. So I had my office where, fortunately, I had my own thermostat. I had it set to 62. And this is with people who had grown up in Southern California. And actually, there are a few people on the team who have ponchos hanging outside of my office. And they would like bring it and all this stuff. And there was one time where the person I mentioned before, Darren, was like, "It's a cooler in here. This is terrible. It's like the Cooler." And that's where it happened. I tried to bring, which nobody in my team understood, the Fonz into it. I thought it was like, hey, the Fonz. It was when I realized, like, I gotta shut up about my age because nobody on the team knew who the freaking Fonz was. That was really rough. And I think at some point, as we're trying to get ourselves into the corporate culture, as we're trying to get ourselves the respect we need, I learned this too from mistakes. Just shut up. Creatives just got to shut up and stop talking about all the great things we're going to do, how we're here. You know, people came in and like, what are these agency people coming in for? We had to just shut up, and what we had to do was make stuff. That's what we do. That's what we do. We do. I love that voodoo that you do so well. Okay, we'll go on here. So we had to create. We had to do another rebranding. So we took our second rebranding, which was to some degree a little more important. But I don't think it would have gone so well if we didn't first rebrand what creatives felt about themselves, that this was a different thing that we were building here, as well as what the organization thought about it. So if you guys remember, 2.5 years ago, that was Experian. First effort we had was updating it. And one of these things that we're doing is changing Experian from this idea of a credit bureau to a consumer brand. Now, I'm not saying that we've succeeded completely, but I think you'll see some of the spots that the company has done. I don't need to pretend to be a patriot because I have great teams that we work with. Is they're, totally changing that perspective, that perception of, I mean, let's face it, when it was before, you'd go to buy a car. You got denied, and it would say Experian. They'd show you why and use some crappy credit score. Despite the fact that Experian doesn't screw up your credit, they just report it. But that was the feeling. It was a rough perception. And that was one of the things we needed to change, was the perception of it is a consumer brand. And for creatives, to change a brand, there's no better problem to solve. So that helped us attract teams as well. So our responsibilities, again, were from logo all the way to broadcast. I'm not going to say that broadcast is the highest, but I'm just trying to create some kind of run there. And along with the the evolving brand, one of the first things that they did, and I'm going to show quite a bit of work if I've got time, it started with identity protection. And it was better identity protection. Our job was to let the world know. So we were a small team. We had to be kind of funky because budgets were different and everything. But we had to work harder, and we didn't have helicopters flying over Florence. But we ended up going to Chile, and it's for another discussion, but the fact that, it's something that we work on, which I like to call, and I guess it's probably not a new term, is brand response advertising, where, the emotion, as we should know, lasts a lot longer than the offer, but you still want the offer. I mean, it is an e-commerce company. And also some of our responsibilities were digital as well. Our scope included digital, included social, organic social, all of these things, so I don't want you to think that it was only broadcast. This was created by a team and art directors who honestly were learning something new, because as I said, an agency has a bit more support. So we have a team who loves learning. They're like, I'm going to learn After Effects. I'm going to learn all these things, and that's why we put it together. I'm going to skip some stuff. So what we did is we delivered great creative, which I'm really proud of, and I feel that the team has done really well. But of course, in-house, we're not out there winning awards. We have to deliver business, and we did. And we delivered better business than they had ever had before. Now, this is an interesting thing about e-commerce that some of you guys will know, is that you want the one on the right to go down, because I remember when I got exposure to these kind of, which honestly, in agency, you don't really see this stuff, that going down is good, that the cost per acquisition is good on on e-commerce as well as paid orders. Everything worked. We went up. These are numbers that they'd never had before. And the whole company celebrated. It wasn't just the agency going to an award show and saying, oh yeah, it's great, not even telling them about it. Because the whole company was part of this. Our clients, our customers, the corporate environment, everything shared in it. And for creatives, that's something which I was unaccustomed to and really was pretty great. And we learned something important from this experience, that we are the same team, that there is no us and them. And I think this is one of the things that I want to say, which is a big learning part about this is, so one thing I think was a mistake is I was trying to build with the team another ad agency. Come into Experian and build an ad agency. And there are so many things that we know and so many experiences I had. And as I said before, so many of the same. But when we had to put it together, there were a lot of struggles. For example, I remember going on these shoots, which were in Santiago, and these are telling moments. We had a freelance producer. And he was miserable on the shoot. And I wanted him to be miserable. I'd worked with him on 30 different shoots before. And he kept saying, it's not working like an agency. It's not working like an agency. You're not reporting to this. We're not doing this. And I realized it's not an agency. And the more you try to make it an agency, whether it be creatives or producers, the more miserable you're going to be. Also, we did one of the greatest hires when we were talking about operations. I had a team of creatives, and we were known for great creative that was never on time. So it's like doing a Super Bowl spot and delivering it the day afterwards. It doesn't really work. So we hired Ellen, who's kind of our account manager, wrangler, and all that. And honestly, she came from, I don't want to say what agency, an agency which I worked at, which is very much about the creatives and the account people. It's about us and them. That's how the creatives work. And she came in to work with a creative team, not an account team that she had the support of and felt like she was one of the them or we were one of the them. And it was the same conversation I had with her. We got to stop thinking about this as the agency model or we're just going to be miserable. And building an agency is not what we should do. What do we like to do, all of us, creatives or company people? We like to build something new. And that is really exciting. Problem solving is what we do. So what do we have in org chart? This is your typical agency org chart. Chief creative, ACD, copy, and all that stuff. Then we have to add in, president, we have to add in the janitor, we have to add in all this stuff. And then I was sitting there about an org chart. I'm trying to put it together. The fact of the matter is, we tossed it all out. I don't know. This org chart stuff, to be honest with you, doesn't really work because we have so many different relationships. My boss, the person I report to, is also my partner in the team. And all these reporting things are all cyclical and all over and completely screwed up. We had to clear the slate. We had to start anew. That's, I guess, one of the major messages I'm trying to say here. Don't try to build an agency. You don't try to build a creative services department. Build something new, and that's really exciting. So we started to build everything from scratch, and one thing I'm proud of as well as part of that is I have a team which, after being ECD of 70 creatives, probably 150 at some point to 50, is I've got a team of 12. And every single one of those cares about each other. Every single one of those will back up each other. Every single one of those trusts each other. And this is because there is no them anymore. We're in a circumstance, there is no client, there is no them. And this is the first time in my career where there is no them. That's what agencies kind of work on. There was only us. And we really are one at Experian. We have the cooler, and that serves its needs as our brand, but we really are all one team. And all those negatives that I was worried about and not being able to fly away, being in an elevator or in a bathroom actually became pretty positive, sitting, standing, whatever, I don't want to make it sexist. But there was so much that we could learn that we hadn't, so much exposure we had. We learned so much, like Brett, who's actually back here, he came from Shiad. He went to his first meeting, his first VP stand-up. His mind was freaking blown. He's like, I have never learned so much in an agency meeting in my entire career. And of course, what does that lead to? We become better creatives because we're seeing more into the company. That is what's so great about this in-house movement. And also, we were exposed to We were participating in the long and short-term plans of it. One thing that was pretty extraordinary to me is that we have now become part of the product and innovation team. Now, to you at IBM, that might seem normal. Well, you were an ECD as well. I mean, that is unbelievable. I'd be like, working on Land Rover. You know, it'd be really great. We'd have a consumer hook where, like, we have 6 cup holders. And they'd be like, oh, that's great. We'll get it back to you in 6 years. We have the team that is building these products right next to us. And we're back and forth. The osmosis of talking is really exciting. I'm wondering which clock I'm supposed to look at. So the in-house life got even better and better for the entire team. So we're beginning to grow. We have more responsibilities. We have to do a lot more, but it was different this time. I really didn't have to talk, which I think was still important. Everyone knows that, so I didn't have to sell it about talking about our Rugrats. It was, didn't have to create stories. It was really now about the work, attracting creatives, because I think, and I mean, it's done pretty well. It's great work. We had done stuff, and now we had a story too. And but still, the best source is that incestuous crowd. And so people were talking about the cooler, talking about house life, and the former haters who had written me on LinkedIn were now changing their tune. A little side note: one of my bosses, which you guys have certainly heard of, is Sir Martin Sorrell. He was even talking on something about, the stock price going down and all this stuff because of this move to in-house. I mean, this is clearly something important. So these people who we'd never talked to before, all my team are from these agencies. And it's not to say these agencies are better or worse or better than us, but this is the kind that now the in-house is a conversation that you can have. But it was more than the creatives. It was others talking too. I mean, budgets were a little different, and we started attracting other ones. We started attracting directors. They were hearing about it. And one of them was, for you guys who might not know, you guys might not have heard of Tarsem, and I just want to give a little shout out to Ellen, who has produced for us and was the reason we got introduced to Tarsem. She has a company, Mike TV. But anyway, Tarsem, who I think arguably is one of the 10 best commercial directors of all time. He did Nike, Good and Evil. He did, I think all that Sony stuff with the colors that you love. This was a guy, who the heck would think that an in-house agent could talk to? Well, honestly, we didn't really tell him at the beginning. And he just liked the boards. And our budgets were a little tight, but he just liked the boards. And that's what good creatives do. And I remember him coming up on the set and going, he has an accent, so I'm going to say it like, a Northeastern American because I don't want to be offensive. But he came up and he's like, I don't understand why this is going so smoothly. Why is this? Things are moving so quickly. Things are going so great. And that was where we kind of confessed, this is an in-house agency. He's like, what is this in-house thing? The client is right here. You don't have to have the art director go and ask the ACD because he's nervous because the CD is there in the team, and then call the client and make sure that we're going to spend another $20 on this. We're right here. And he actually loved this in-house thing. And he kind of helped me with that joke about outhouses. He's a pretty funny guy. But we were working with the best. We had the best DPs. We had the best editors. And we were doing it for less money because people were enjoying the fact that the process was better. People wanted to work with a cooler. They wanted to work with Experian. And they were excited about it because their lives were better too. They became evangelists. And with these people we've worked with at the top-notch post places and directors are talking about this now as well. And so what do? We make even better work. And also things which are, I would call those brand response, and one that are more like brand response. One of the things that is changing is to a consumer brand is, let's face it, with credit, it's kind of like diets. It's like if you do this thing for 2 years, you're going to lose 8 pounds and you're going to keep it off. With credit too, it's like, if you do this in 6 years after you pay your bills all the time, you're going to get another 16 points. In pursuit of this new company, this new corporation, this new Experian, which is no shit, I'll just tell all you guys, that boost shit is pretty unbelievable. It is the first time ever that you really can go on this thing. My points went up 24 points instantly. So it can't hurt you, by the way. So I'm just giving you a little thing. Before you go buy a car or get a credit card or something, do that, because it's pretty amazing. And I think that's why we were able to do such good work, because we have such great products that the team are doing. I'm just going to give you a couple more because I'm kind of riding it, but this is kind of fun.
Now doing the same thing over and over again can get you a different result. Because with Experian Boost, you can raise your credit scores just by doing what you've always done. Boost your credit scores instantly, only with Experian Boost. Free at Experian.com/boost.
Not to sell the product too hard, but the fact of the matter is you're not getting credit for all your utilities you pay. You're not. So now this is getting added to your file, to your Experian file. So, and the only time it can hurt your thing is if you go into default, but that's always happened. But that stuff has never been reported, and this is being added to it. So of course, as we said, we did digital, and that whole thing is, you saw, I know, it's a little goofy. You know, we have other bits as well, because our responsibilities are on beyond broadcast. We could talk about, you know, if you listen to the podcast with Robert, I mean, my belief in coming up with the idea, whether you're doing a Super Bowl spot or a garbage can wrap, the idea has to work. So just showing that these are other ways we, you know, other responsibilities we have to do an integrated campaign. But I will say that, okay, so we are weirdo schmucks.
Want to boost your FICO score instantly? No problema. It's free with Experian Boost.
We can't help ourselves.
Try it now with the free Experian app. Download today.
And it's really become a little difficult, because now at work everybody says no problema, and we're like, oh, okay, well at least it works. Anyway, you know, everyone was happy. We had great results again. These are, I can't show the numbers, you can understand that, but these are when those spots ran during March Madness. So, I mean, that was as much of a change that we, working with the team, and a great product made for the bottom line. And that's something which we never even thought about. It was like, you know, this is a new thing being in-house, and it worked. And all from an in-house team that is, I think, on par with the Widens, the 72s, the Shiatts, all the people that we brought with. Okay, so to get back though, so why did I almost get canned? It's still not drugs. I'm still not going to fess up to that. But I walked in, and 2 weeks after I started, I asked someone to stay past 5 o'clock. I was like, we have a presentation tomorrow. What the hell are you doing? Can you just stay past 5 o'clock? No, I've got to go pick up my kid. What? That is not in my freaking mindset. We have a presentation tomorrow. And HR is probably a little different in an agency than it is in thing, and that was really working. You know what? I was wrong. There are there's a lot of FaceTime stuff that we do, not FaceTime, the talking thing, but you know, it's almost like doctors who have to spend all that time, not because it's good for them being doctors 72 hours straight, it's because the people they work for did, and nobody wants to give up on it. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is, some of the mistakes were that even that first moment, I was trying to build another ad agency. I was trying to get people to act like it was an ad agency, and that was wrong. And I was trying to build another Outhouse, and that kind of stinks. Don't do that. Don't force into what you think it's supposed to be. Don't try to mimic what has been done before. Whether you're doing a creative services team or a global agency, that was kind of my epiphany, was it's new, and that's exciting. That's great. You're building something new. Take time to figure it out, to solve problems. That's what we love to do. So what's great is just embrace it and solve it. And no matter where you guys are on this journey, I think that'll really help, and you be successful. We still have a lot to learn. I'm not saying we're successful or done yet. We're learning every day. And I think in-house we learn a lot more. But that's the only thing I'd say that worked for us. And the examples of honestly failures as well as successes is, it's great. You're doing something new. You guys are creating a new industry. I know a lot of it has been there before, but no one talked about it before as much. So now we're all salespeople for what has changed in this industry. Something which I've become an evangelist for because I love it. Now I just got to end with something incredibly stupid. One more thing. There's a new award at the Addies. I hope it's going to go farther, but hopefully you guys will enjoy it. It will be in the OC Addies at least. It is the Innies and the Outies Award. So we're hoping to have these. I'm sorry. It has to be utter stupidity at every moment. But this really will be an award at next year's Addies because in our area, the in-house has become such a force that we felt that there needed to be, okay, it was modeled after me when I told you I lost 40 pounds and I was wearing my thing. But anyway, let's go on. Thank you guys very much. I enjoyed myself. And questions. I know we've only got 9 minutes, sorry.
Knowing you're not trying to build an ad agency in-house, how do you handle business affairs?
Well, I would say we did it poorly. And we are now a creative team that, as I had said, had just brought in this girl, Ellen, who was kind of helping us with operations and helping it to get together and helping us, first of all, as far as business goes, be on time, which is something that, honestly, creatives are not very good at. But as in that org chart, which is a little different, is as we're building it, the CMO, the president, operations, compliance, all that stuff are with us. It's no longer like we have to have a representative that goes from the agency, that goes to the planner, that goes to the account person, that goes to it. We're all in it together. So when we have things like, I walk up to them and ask them the question, and we're really all in a pit together. And it's really, as I said, it scared the crap out of me at the beginning, but learning so much more, and I would never talk to those people. As an ECD, I would never talk to those people. It would be like the brief comes down, you got to hit this numbers, you got to win awards, and you got to make it so we get new business. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. I know it's not my thing that I know too much about.
Hi. It sounds like you use offshore resources. Do you have anyone on your team that's based, say, in India or an offshore resource, and any best practices for managing that?
Honestly, we are all, well, here's the thing. My team is responsible for, Experian is a huge company on 6 continents. There are kind of 3 major consumer bureaus. One is in Costa Mesa, where we are, Sao Paulo, and London. And we are just responsible for consumer only. 80% of Experian is business, is B2B. We're responsible for the 20%. Fortunately, that matters a lot because even the CFO of American Express watches commercials. But our team is right there. I mean, all the creative happens right there. We do engage with offshore resources to help us with production, to help us, because we don't have a lot of the resources that an agency would have, which, maybe we will at some point, but like Bloomberg talked about like a production studio. We don't have that. I mean, our responsibility is to think and create. So we have engaged, help with that, which has been extraordinary. Because, for example, social, which many of you know, you can come up with one great idea and you can spend a week and a half just doing all the sizes for it. I would prefer not to have my team who are thinkers spend too much time doing. They're supposed to do both, but it becomes a little too much. But our team, the creative team, is all in a space as big as this, and we are always together. And we, dare I say, love each other. I mean, it's really an extraordinary team. There's no backbiting. There's none of that. It's really great. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm working on a team that sort of just has our first creative resource in India, so I'm just trying to figure out how other people are doing that.
Well, when I was on the agency side, there are 3 or 4 offices I had to take care of, and I think that's leadership. I mean, I had to have great creative directors at different offices, and creative directors that you're building, like the Cooler, that has a certain ethos that believes in, dare I say, failure, believes in engaging, that believes in simple brand understanding. But yeah, I have had that responsibility, but not at an in-house level. But yeah, different offices across the United States, and I mean, it's hard, but I think you need to create Oh, that's a good song. Is I think you need to create a culture, and I know every time I hear the word culture, we were talking about it, I feel like I got to reach for my 6-shooter because it's a little overused, but it's true. It's like synergy and disruption. Those are words that we just use too much, but they're right. Hi. Hi, Sherry.
You just were speaking about culture, and I was wondering, thank you. I was wondering if you had to do a hard sell within the culture of your company to go with more of a fear-based dark web type of promotion or campaign.
You know, it's interesting, and I'll give you a little insight into that creative, is I don't necessarily believe that's the best thing for a brand. So I think what it was more was, and the way that we built it, I believe, was to be more, this is going on out there. I don't think it should be, you know, even when you're doing car insurance, it shouldn't be like, if you get in an accident, you're going to be screwed and die, and your family is going to be alone. The fact of the matter is there are car accidents. The fact of the matter is there is identity theft, and it's growing. And rather than have, you know, which is fine, you know, the more ShamWow thing, which is like, hey, did you know that your identity could be stolen? Which is, yeah, I know that. But again, making that emotional connection, which as advertisers and marketers we need to do, was to say this is going on out here in a way that's engaging, in a way that, you know, maybe you think is a movie, maybe you think, but it's disruptive if you're watching it on the NFL. And so I would like, you know, I don't think Experian is being scary because I think that's off-brand. I think it's saying this crap is going on, and here is the solution, and we're trying to help with that. And that is a hard thing to balance, and I don't think that's necessarily Experian. I think that's with a lot of the work that we do, where it is just to say, if you don't get this product, you're hosed. But that is a very short-term way of thinking about branding. I think branding, that word again. It is, you're right, it's an interesting word. When we came in, it was branding. It was like, you guys just move flowers around the table. You don't get numbers. Well, fortunately we did. Oh, come on, this side. I neglected this side. Now I feel anything from this side?
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you very much.